Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. Excited, as always, to be here in my favorite place for the week, live with you, my listeners, enjoying every moment of life here in Vero Beach, Florida. And I know that you're all over the world listening to me on the podcast and on iHeartRadio. And to my local listeners, aren't you enjoying this beautiful day? I know we've lost some of that crispness in the air, and we've gone back to the fact that we live in Florida today, but it is still always just such a beautiful day. And my mom would be saying, look at those clouds, Laura, that blue sky. Doesn't it just lift your heart? So as you go about your day today, if you're listening to me in the car, on the radio, or at home, take a look out the window and just look at the beauty that is this wonderful place that we get to live in. Wherever you are in the world, take that moment and look out that window and look at the beauty of where you live. My guest today is somebody that we've been trying to get her on the show for a while, and schedules just... my show book's out so far in advance, and I'm really honored by the fact that everybody wants to be on the show. And I really wanted to have her on. I met her through my dear friend, Bobby Gavanis, who you've heard me mention multiple times. And my guest is Sahar Irwin. She is originally from Iran, and I'm just going to bring her right on. Let's talk about her. Sahar, welcome to the show.
Hi, Laura. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm so glad that we finally got to have you on the show. It's what you talk about, and your life story is so powerful. As a woman who was born and raised in the United States, I accept certain things as just part of life, right? Growing up, I couldn't play sports. I wanted to be on my brother's Little League team, but I couldn't because I was a woman. And eventually, Title 19 allowed women to participate in sports. But there wasn't a lot that I felt I couldn't do. I could wear dresses. I could wear my hair whatever way I wanted. I could wear short shorts for that brief moment in time when I had a body where I was willing to wear short shorts, But you come from a country that just stepping outside the door for you could create so much fear. You're from Iran, correct?
Yes, I am. I was born and raised there.
For an American woman, or even a man, it just seems like a country that we don't understand. And you speak a lot about embracing feminine. I cannot speak this morning, Mr. B. Embracing femininity. And, it got me thinking, what does it really mean to be a woman? But it differs depending on where you live, doesn't it?
It does. Where I grew up as a young woman, going to college, I was not allowed to wear makeup and nail polish in public. I couldn't just go out with a nice dress and have my hair out. So I had to literally cover my hair and wear a uniform in public. And it was an issue for me because, I was a young woman that I wanted to be able to express myself and feel free. And, these limits was truly hard on me. And I remember that every Friday morning I would go mountain hiking with my dad in north of Tehran, my hometown. And I was very stubborn, so I would still manage to wear the makeup, wear the nail polish, but I would wear sunglasses to cover my eyeshadow, or I would wear a white glove to cover the nail polish, and pretending that I am doing all of this for the sake of protecting my skin from sun. But in reality, it was just I wanted to still be able to wear these things. And back then, I even had something that my 12-year-old son right now has no clue what it is, Walkman. I don't, with new generation, they don't know what Walkman is. So I had a little Walkman also that I had to hide under my uniform. and I would play American music. Back then, like Celine Dion was my favorite. So I would do all of these things and would go hiking. And at the base of the mountain, Laura, it was a police like a security, they would monitor women from head to toe to make sure that they are following the rules. And if they would caught us, they could potentially send us to jail. So it's like every Friday morning, I'm going to do some exercise and expressing my freedom, but then at the same time, I'm risking my life. And then when I would pass the base of the mountain and pass the security guards, then I would go up and take my gloves off. I would take my sunglasses off, even my scarf off, off and on, so that I could, let the fresh air go through my curly hair and just express myself as a young woman.
But if a security guard happened to come by, or even another man came by and saw you like that, you could still get into trouble and still be arrested.
It was always risky, yes.
I can't even imagine living a life like that. I mean, how do you get through something like that when by being born, your rights are limited? You're living in fear every moment.
Right. I would say by knowing at your core that these are your rights, and then having the resilience to find a way to become creative, to say, okay, this is my circumstances and challenges and the system, but I'm going to find a way to be creative and still experience what I want to experience despite the limit.
It sounds like your family was more progressive than perhaps a number of other families inside Iran, because you were able, your dad probably knew that you were wearing makeup or had the Walkman or things like that, or is that not true?
No, it's true. I'm from a middle-class family. My dad is a doctor, so they really didn't have any issue with me, wearing these things or doing these things. The only concern was that, hey, be careful that you don't get caught, because there were times that I would go hiking by myself, and back then we didn't even have cell phone. So it's like my dad drops me off at the base of the mountain, and a few hours later he comes back to pick me up, and of course they worry for me, what if something happens?
What if a girl was born into a family that wasn't like yours?
I would say like some ladies there, some girls, they just get used to it and they are okay with the restriction. That's their belief. And then some don't, some struggle with it.
Okay, so you're born into a middle-class family. Your dad's a doctor, so education, it sounds like, is something very important to them. In America, we hear about women in Iran not being allowed to have certain basic freedoms. They can perhaps go to school, but maybe not for everything. They can't get at certain kinds of jobs. And we don't really know what's true or not. We know what we're being allowed to know about that country. How did you get the education that you got?
Well, it was not difficult to get the education. I have a bachelor's degree in applied math, and it was, me being woman didn't make it any difficult to get my degree versus if I was a male student. The only thing I would say it was challenging was that when I got graduated and I was seeking a job, I would say that it was difficult being a woman, but even more difficult being in the environment that was conservative, religious-wise, and, like me not following necessarily the rules. It truly made it difficult to go on interviews. And, I wanted to be a teacher and work at school, and I couldn't get the job, even though I had the qualification. And then eventually when I got accepted one or two places, I saw that the environment was too hostile for me, that I could not be myself, and I decided that, I prefer to work at my uncle's art gallery and do something totally different than what I studied for 4 years in college, than go and work in an environment that I don't feel it's aligned with my values.
What do you mean by it was too hostile?
Well, it was too conservative, like too religious, and even though I was born to that religion, that's not what I practice or necessarily believe. So it was difficult to work in an environment that, like your boss, your coworkers, believe certain way or dress certain way, and you don't necessarily believe in any of it. So you either have to fake it or to make it through, or you just have to not be in the system, and I choose not to be in the system.
How did you get exposed to these alternatives to your religion and beliefs?
What do you mean by your question?
Well, you said that... Hold on, I just knocked my headset out for a second there, so... got it. I pulled the cord right out there. Okay, so what I guess where I'm going is... A lot of people around the world think, that, you just have complete access to everything that's going on outside of Iran or outside of some other countries. We just think, because we're so used to having complete access to alternative viewpoints. But I'm thinking that that's not that easy to get access to a different level of your religion in Iran as a woman. You said you had a Walkman and you were listening to Celine Dion. How easy is it to get access to that? And where did you begin to see that what was happening wasn't necessarily right?
I would say that, yes, it was very difficult to have access to resources and know that, hey, there is another environment, another world outside of where I'm living. I remember back then we had satellites that would broadcast TV shows like, let's say, Oprah or news like CNN, BBC through the satellite, because we couldn't watch these things through our national TV. But it was hard, even with having a satellite back then. There was always a risk that the government police would, get to our house and discover that we have this illegally and take the satellite, and we had to pay a fine or maybe even be arrested and go to jail. So it's almost that, like, we fight for it to be able to be exposed to other resources, to know what the rest of the world live or believe in, but, again, with a risk. And for me, that satellite, I watched a lot of Oprah Winfrey show when I was young in Iran, or, I watched news. So that was a way for me to have access to what's going on with the rest of the world. And also, I started going to English classes from age 9, and my teacher, because she lived in UK for a long time, she was able to expose us also to another culture, and I got fascinated by the Western culture.
Okay, so, it's like I sit here and I listen to everything you're saying and go, oh my God, I have so many questions. Let me just pick one for the moment. How did you get from Iran to the United States then? Because that's not that easy for a woman.
No, not at all. I actually was not allowed to date, because if you can imagine, in that environment, it was not easy at the time to just really date guys. So I really didn't date anybody until I think I was age 26 or something, around that time. And I was introduced to Yahoo Messenger by one of my friends, and she said that, hey, if you get on this, application on computer, you would be able to communicate with guys. Because that is not what we could do. Like going to college, we could not freely talk to our male students. And at work, similar thing. So I got on Messenger, and my intention was I just want to connect with people from all over the world and just make friends, and not necessarily in intention, in the back of my mind. And then I met my ex-husband, and we fell in love. We started as a friendship, and during the course of 3 years, it ended up being a love that we discovered for each other. And then eventually I moved to U.S. by fiancé visa about 15 years ago.
So you met somebody online, essentially, while you were still living in Iran?
Yes.
In a country where that's like not allowed what you're doing. And
no, because I just remember, like, it truly was not allowed. Like, even though my family were open-minded, it was hard for them to understand the concept of their daughter is like, communicating with an American, and, he was older than me, and totally different culture, different belief system. He was Christian. So just the whole thing was very hard for my family at the beginning to accept.
And then they accepted it, and you ended up in the United States.
They did. We went to Cyprus for the total of 3 weeks because it was not safe and necessary for my ex-husband to come to Iran, being an American. So we decided to choose a different country to meet, and Cyprus was a place that me and my family could get visa relatively easy as a visitor. So we went there a total of 3 weeks during this 3-year period, and they met with my ex-husband. They truly liked him, and they agreed eventually, even though still, they had all their concern that I'm gonna leave Iran by myself, going to a foreign country with somebody that truly they didn't still know.
Well, you have an amazing set of parents.
They are very supportive. Even though they are not always agree with my decision, they are still loving me and they are supportive.
That's just beautiful from a culture where that doesn't happen very often. All right, so now you marry this man that you've known for years, but only known in person for 3 weeks.
Exactly.
That just blows my mind, okay? Because although I'm divorced twice, so obviously I'm not the best judge of character when it comes to picking out the men in my life. But you get to America. What was that like for you? Being married to somebody that is not from your own culture and moving to a completely different world.
Right. Well, I would say I had mixed emotions because a big part of me wanted it, wanted to experience living in a Western country, in a Western culture. Since age 9, I was fascinated by it. So I was excited. And also this man truly at the time was the love of my life and the first man in my life also. So I was planning to, have kids with him and celebrate Christmases by, in a beautiful house in front of fireplace. So that was the intention truly for me. So I was happy about and excited about this. But then at the same time, I was nervous, of course, that I'm going somewhere that I have no family, no friends. And if this person doesn't treat me nice, I have nobody to even run to. And so I had that fear in the back of my mind too. And then I grew up in an environment, culture-wise, that like we were very outgoing, and we always like interact with a big family, big friends. And then suddenly, when I moved to U.S., it was a small town in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, that maybe it was just few thousand people living there. And they weren't necessarily at the time open to someone from another country, another culture, accent, everything. So it was a very much culture shock for me at the beginning, despite all that desire that I had to move to U.S.
Just moving to a small town in Pennsylvania would be culture shock enough for most people, including me. I can't imagine it having grown up where I've grown up. But to be there, and then it sort of sounds like you didn't necessarily feel welcome.
I did not, because, and I lost my confidence. Even though I knew English, I remember first restaurant that I went was Applebee's, and I had to order my food, and I struggled to order it, even though I knew what I want, because I totally lost my confidence, and I was thinking people are judging me for my accent. So for the first, I would say 2 years or so, I totally lost the confidence until at one point, I think after a year or two, my ex-husband had to do a surgery, And because of this surgery, I had to take over life. I literally had to call and make doctor appointments. I had to go and meet with his crew for his business. So I had no option. And then, I had to put my fear and lack of confidence aside and really step in.
This all happens. And then, part of your story, your entire story has always fascinated me, but then, you get to where you want to be. You lose your confidence after thinking, this is definitely what I want to do. And you end up in a woman's shelter?
I did. We had a 6-7 years marriage, and, we had really amazing good times together, and then we had these very difficult times, and the relationship became abusive, and I, being young, having my first experience in my life with a man, I always thought like it's going to change, it's going to get better. And of course, in relationship, both people, I believe, contribute to the nature of the relationship, whether it goes good or bad. But still, it was truly abusive emotionally, physically, and I survived it until towards the end I got to the point that I realized that I don't deserve to be treated like this. No matter what I have done, even if I really haven't done anything wrong to be treated like this. And that's when I had to leave my house in the middle of the night with my 2-year-old son and go to a women's shelter for a few nights.
It's something that could have happened in your own country and would have been acceptable is now happening to you in your new country. That just blows my mind. I don't even know how to respond to what you've gone through in your own life. So how did you then come back from that to become a Tony Robbins coach, to have your own business, to be there helping other women learn how to embrace who they truly are authentically? And I know that's a really, really long story. We've got about 2 minutes to national news, so why don't you tease us with that, and then we'll go into it after the news.
It was truly one of the most difficult times in my life, and, I did not know my self-worth. And, I was alone by myself in a small town. I was vulnerable. And, but then when enough was enough, I realized that I had to make a change. And being in that shelter, even though it was one of the darkest times in my life, but then at the same time, it opened my eyes up to what other women are going through, that they were in a much more worse situation than I was. And it started to developing a heart and passion for me to help women somehow. And I didn't know, of course, how at the time. And when I was in shelter during that stay, I promised myself that this is not going to happen again. And this is the lowest I have ever hit in my life, and it's not going to happen. I'm going to get out of here. I don't know what I will do with my life, but I know that, I will move forward with it.
Okay, so hang on right there. We're cutting over to national news. We're here with Sahar Irwin talking about embracing your femininity, a life from Iran to the United States. We'll be right back.
Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're listening to me live, you just listened to the national news and a couple of commercials. If you're listening on the podcast, that was pretty instantaneous since I strip out all of that stuff for those who listen on the podcast, which you can get on it'sallaboutthequestions.com or anywhere you can get your podcast. We are listened to in, something like 30-something countries, and this is my joy, this is my love, and I am here with Sahar Irwin, who has been sharing her life living in Iran and moving to the United States and then ending up in an abusive marriage and getting out of it, who now spends her life teaching women to find their inner beauty, passion, and their voice. And she gets to do it all wearing makeup and nail polish, which to people like me who grew up in the United States, it's something I took for granted. But for a woman who grew up in Iran, it's not something that was safe to do. To be a woman and allow who you are to truly shine out like that, because you could be arrested for doing that. So, Sahar, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Laura, for having me on the show.
So before the national news break, we were talking about what it was like. You were in an abusive marriage and how you managed to bring yourself out of that and move into the work that you're doing today, which, as you told me during the commercial break, you don't feel safe going back to Iran to even see your parents because of who you're being in the world. That just would be so hard.
It is because, for my business, I try to put myself out there and share my message and story authentically, and it can potentially cause a problem for me if I go back to the country. That is why my preference is that I meet my parents in another country, like Canada, for example.
Gotta love Canada. I think it's the new neutral zone. Forget Switzerland. Talk about Canada, right?
Yes.
Yes, and that was my Star Trek reference thrown in there. Once a geek, always a geek. But, you're a math geek, so so you totally get it. All right, so let's talk some more about this whole idea of how you began embracing and helping other women find their inner beauty. I think, I've always been in male-dominated fields my whole career, computers, tech. I went to engineering college, all of these different things. I went from wearing the high heels to now I just want to wear flats and sneakers and jeans, and I really don't care so much about wearing evening gowns and putting makeup on all the time. I've actually spoken on stages without makeup.
Right.
But that's not what you're talking about. It's not about that external, is it?
It's really not. My message at its core is encouraging women to be authentic to who they are and not be afraid to express themselves. So if for one woman wearing makeup and doing their hair and nails and wearing a nice dress is the way that they feel beautiful about themselves and they feel like they can express themselves the best about who they are, then that is what the message is encouraging them to do. But if for another woman they feel that they are their best wearing a jean and, or yoga pants and, don't wear makeup, then that's what's best for them. But it's about, bringing out that inner beauty, that passion that we have bring that from inside out, and also letting the world to hear about our voice.
Did that work that you're doing now come from the fact that you couldn't show who you were while you were in Iran?
Exactly. The core of my message is rooted to my story from where I grew up. And because wearing this nail polish was so important to me that even one time when I was in college, I was almost was asked to leave the campus to remove my nail polish. And that was the only way I was allowed to come back to my math class. And, that was something for me so dear that up to this point, even if I have like a high fever of 103 and I feel extremely sick, I still manage to wear this nail polish. And because it represents freedom for me. Just
the ability to do whatever you want and not worry.
Right.
Okay. Do you have a favorite color?
It could be anything from red to purple to pink.
I think I've begun channeling my mom because I'm now wearing glitter nail polish.
I love
it. It's interesting because it's such a simple thing, right? Nail polish. but you've made it into the metaphor for embracing who you are.
Yes, because, I find this about myself, and I know it's true for other women too. If we are going through a tough time, it could be a breakup, it could be a challenge in business, health, anything. If we just take the time to, go maybe to a hair salon and do our hair, or if we can't even afford that, do it at home. But take that time to take care of ourselves, and for me, it could be nail polish. For somebody else, it could be running around the lake for half an hour or walking their dog, but giving that permission to ourselves to take the time to take care of ourselves, it changes our mood right away. Like, I can have the worst day, and the moment that I go to the hair salon and I do my hair or I do my nail, it just changes something in my attitude that tells me, you know what, life is not that bad. Try again.
My ex-husband, every time I went to get a manicure, pedicure before a speaking gig or before something, he'd go, and if I wasn't able to sort of ramp myself up prior to an event, he goes, Laura, well, you haven't gotten your mani-pedi yet. You haven't started putting your armor on yet.
That's so true. Yes, it changes our attitude when we take care of our look, however that look means to, for us, if we want to be more like a tomboy or more girly, it doesn't matter. As long as we take care of ourselves, it changes our attitude.
Yeah, and I never thought about it until he had said, Laura, when you get your mani-pedi, it's like putting on your armor. You're preparing mentally for what's coming next. And for you, the nail polish, I think, is also putting on your armor to do battle as a woman. Not battle, but to fully be who you are. It allows you to connect. That's your ritual that allows you to connect to your inner you.
Exactly. And what I'm discovering as I'm developing this message, teaching women about embracing their femininity, is that I believe we women, at our heart, we are feminine goddesses. We are beautiful. We are passionate. We are nurturing. But at the same time, we all have a voice. It doesn't matter if a woman lives in Africa or they're here in the United States. We all have a voice. We all have a story worth hearing. And we are all having a talent, a potential to make a mark in the world. And, the two are not contradiction with each other because, like you mentioned, you were working in an environment that was male-dominated or, your industry is so logical, and us women at our core, we are emotional beings, nurturing beings, loving beings. And the two, being feminine and also being a leader and having a voice is something that is not in contradiction with each other because we can be this feminine goddess at our core, but at the same time be a warrior. And what I'm passionate to do as I progress with my message is to help women understand that, at your work you can be a leader, but still you can do it with elegance of a woman. Because that feminine woman, when she comes home, she would be more nurturing to her loved ones than if she brings that attitude of a masculine energy to her loved ones.
What would you say to my listeners who are not feeling very confident, whether they're a man or a woman, because, we're live on the air, so we're not limited to just women that are listening. Somebody who's not feeling confident and can't really feel their own inner beauty, whatever it may be, their inner warrior, what piece of advice would you give them to help them begin to unlock that?
I would say a lot of our lack of self-confidence comes from, our environment and us listening to other people's opinion too much and value their opinion versus our opinion. And it's interesting because I had this conversation a couple of days ago with my boyfriend, and he said, I'm surprised that, when you go, for example, here in Orlando to Park Avenue and you walk, you don't even care if guys are looking at you and checking you out or not. I said, yes, I don't care because I don't, for me, when I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I want to give myself validation as a person, as a woman. And I don't care, what other people think about my look or give me validation and approval or not. Of course, when I'm in a relationship with someone, it melts my heart. It makes me excited when, I get compliments from my loved ones. But, whatever I do in the morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, when I dress up, I do it for myself. So I only seek my own approval. And if we all practice this, that, the only person that we need to please, the only person that we need their approval is ourselves, then we kind of eliminate this constant need at maybe we are not enough because we are not being approved by others. And it's also a conscious practice, like you mentioned, like a ritual that we have to do every day, because confidence, it's nothing that we go to the grocery store and buy it. Confidence is something that we have to generate it from inside out every day consciously. And at first it's going to be difficult, but the more we practice it, the more better we get at it.
I think you and my guest I had on last week, Dr. Joan Rosenberg, need to meet, because you guys would just absolutely love her. Her latest book is 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, Mastering the Difficult Emotions and to Gain Confidence, Resiliency, and more. And you very much said the same things, that it really comes from inside, that you have to be comfortable with yourself. Yet for so many people, that is so hard. What do you say to them?
Again, Laura, it's a matter of practice, because, even though, everyone right now, you said male, women, female are listening to the show, but let's address an issue that a lot of women have, about their look. We think that we have to have certain body image, certain facial image and everything, because of all the advertising that is out there in the media and social media. And we constantly compare ourselves with all these advertisement, and we feel lack about our own self. And one of the things is like quit the comparison, and just be grateful about who you are, where you are. And if you want to improve your look, like if somebody wants to be more fit and lose weight, do it for yourself, do it for your health. But don't do it because you saw somebody on Instagram and who knows what kind of a picture they got, and they tailor it with,
right,
all the tools, So it's just, this is something that we have to practice every day consciously.
The work that you do, I know you studied with Tony Robbins and Brendan Burchard and more, and you've even got a certification. You're a marriage education, divorce prevention, and strategic intervention coach. I feel like you've transcended all of those different certifications that you have, that you did all this learning, you spent all this time, but if anything, it just helped you access what you already knew and who you already were.
It is very true, because I went intensely into educating myself in the self-development world for the last 8-9 years, and I literally, for the first 2 years, when I was introduced to Tony Robbins' environment, I took probably about 17 live seminars as a participant and crew member. So I really went deep into it, but what I'm learning recently, that it's not that hard, and we all as human beings have all the resources that we need within us. And like you said, even though I went through all this journey, everything that I needed was rooted in my story, like as a child growing up in Iran. And, recently, one of the things that I try to practice is that let go of the manual. So when I'm dealing with the loved ones, it could be a boyfriend, it could be a client, it could be I'm hosting a retreat for women, I try to tell myself, you don't need to come up with like 10 action items and steps for everyone and make it complicated. Just come from the heart, speak from the heart, and experience. And, get rid of manuals. People don't need manual. People need somebody that is authentic, that is raw, and sharing from the heart. And when I practice from this place, I get a better response from people.
Yet for so many people, they feel so vulnerable when they're accessing their authentic them. And I think some of it, and I've seen it with my own clients, is because they don't really know who they are. They've never allowed themselves to truly be vulnerable to themselves, to allow their own feelings to come up.
Right. It's a very hard concept because we have been told by our environment that, hey, vulnerability is a sign of weakness. Like if you are a man especially, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't be emotional, you have to follow your logic. Or, if you're a woman at work, you have to follow your logic. Emotions are a sign of weakness. But if we get to that place that we are comfortable with our emotions, with who we are at our core, and just express ourselves with no fear, that vulnerability is actually more powerful than all these masks that we put on ourselves to supposedly protect ourselves. But in reality, we are hurting ourselves. When we are vulnerable with our loved ones at our work environment, we give permission to other people that they can also be vulnerable and be human. And then the connections that we create is at a deeper level.
Right. I want to make sure, since we're getting close to the end of the show, that you have a chance to share how people can get in touch with you and follow up with you. So why don't you share your contact information with everybody?
Sure. My website is www.saharirwin.com, and Sahar is Sahar, and last name Irwin is Irwin, and my email address is sahar@saharirwin.com.
And you're based out of Orlando, Florida, for anybody that's local.
Yes.
All right. So last thought, what would you like to share with my listeners?
To be their authentic self and just follow their heart. And by doing that, they give other people permission to do the same. And it's the most beautiful thing.
And what if they're afraid to do that? How can they help themselves connect to who they truly are?
Just one baby step at a time. Even if they get off track, 9 out of 10 get back on track and practice and take small steps. And, when they achieve something, they just pat themselves on the back for their victory and never be ashamed of who they are at their core.
Which for so many people can be so hard, that whole concept of not feeling ashamed for who you are or even liking yourself. I know right now I've been on steroids a lot in the last 8 months due to sound-induced vertigo so that I can do my show and speak and do things, and I've gained a lot of weight. And I'm not comfortable, and there are some days I look in the mirror and I'm annoyed to no end at myself, even though I know I had to do certain things for my health. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of other of my listeners out there. I see this with my clients all the time. What should they be asking themselves to help themselves to connect to who they are?
I would say having the attitude of gratitude can be very helpful. That even though when we are going through a challenge like what you shared, with your health, that, looking at who you are at your core, Laura, and not be worried about, that physical change that might not be pleasant to you or might be judged by other people, and go back to who you are at your core, the beautiful woman that you are, and this vibrant energy that you have that everybody can sense it, listening to you, and just be grateful for all the talents, all the gifts that you have, and know that, whatever you're dealing with can be temporary.
I love that last part. Well, I loved all of it, and thank you so much. Truly honored by your words. It's temporary, right? One moment to the next, things can radically change. What in your life has been such a big change for you recently? I mean, obviously going from Iran to the United States to an abusive marriage to having a wonderful son, and a boyfriend, your boyfriend said to you, you just don't care what other people think, do you? But that's not something that everybody can connect to. We worry a lot about what other people think of us and how they're judging us. So is there a challenge that you're currently dealing with right now?
Of course, many challenges. One thing that I'm actually experiencing, and I'm trying to look at it in a beautiful way, is my own relationship, because, we are two people in love and we have a past history, and we come together and we want to have a pleasant relationship, and then we have our own sets of challenges. And I am learning that, practice virtues that I didn't necessarily practice in my previous relationships. And one of the things is patience. Patience is so important in love life that, when somebody does something that you don't necessarily agree with it, just be patient for the sake of love, for the sake of relationship. And also put that, I would say, the flashlight back at myself, and instead of saying to my partner, you should have done this or that, put that flashlight back right at me and say, what can I do as a person to improve and to nourish this relationship more? Is it some inner work I need to do on myself? And that is what I'm in the process of working and evolving as a person.
It's a beautiful idea of turning that flashlight on yourself, looking in that mirror and saying that I'm involved in whatever's happening. It's not just putting it outside. It's not being the victim. It's reflecting back to yourself. And your story, I know, has impacted me greatly. And I know it's impacted my listeners as well. And I want to make sure one more time that we share your contact information, Sahar. So let's do that one more time.
Yes, my website is www.saharirwin.com. Sahar, S-A-H-A-R, and Irwin, I-R-W-I-N. And my email address is sahar@saharirwin.com. And I'm actually hosting a retreat March 23rd on the topic of embracing your femininity.
Oh, great.
For anybody that is interested.
And for anybody listening on the podcast after March 23rd, go up to Sahar's website, because she always has amazing workshops, and you can work with her directly as well. And I know she just loves hearing from people and wanting to help you grow and embrace your own inner femininity and who you really are. And I love this, that anyone can be a feminine goddess, yet a warrior at heart. We're all our own Wonder Womans, aren't we?
Exactly.
Although I always connected more to Xena Warrior Princess than Wonder Woman. I don't know why. I think because Xena had so many more failings. Wonder Woman always just seems so perfect. And I'm so not that.
That's so cute.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the show, Sahar.
Thank you very much, Laura.
All right, everybody. I want you to embrace your own true warrior, who you are in your heart. That's why I have guests on the show like Sahar and Dr. Joan Rosenberg last week, and all the guests that I've had on the show. Because if you can embrace your own inner warrior, you can achieve anything you want in your life. So remember, the right questions can change your life. So what are you asking today? Have a great day, everyone, and let me know what color nail polish you're wearing.
You've been listening to It's All About the Questions, starring Laura Stewart. Connect with Laura at it'sallaboutthequestions.com and download a free workbook that will help you ask better questions starting today.